Welcome to NGANO. Rungano and I are going to be speaking with Norman Nyazema today about his life growing up in Harare Township.
Okay, all right. I was born at Harare Hospital, right? Which at that time was called Pagomo because the Harare Hospital is on a hill, and we used to live. The place is national. It's national, and it's part of Mbare now, but it was part of Harare. Why was it called national? I think I didn't discover a long time ago that the name national came from a national housing scheme that was being run by the government. So the place then got that name.
So you grew up in the Black Mecca of Zimbabwe. Could you tell us the first time that you became political or your first political experience?
When you mentioned the first time, did I tell you that the first time I ate an apple was given to me by your father?
Really? No, you didn't.
I did not tell you that.
No.
Oh, my first apple. My first apple. I tasted it. You see, your father comes, Kumba Kwedi Susu, and is eating this apple. And when you're eating an apple, it's got a sound. It's got a particular sound,
Yes.
that comes from the mouth. Then I said to him, "What's that?" It's an apple. Is that what an apple is? Because I knew there was something called an apple. So he gave me to taste it. That was the first time I ever tasted an apple. Guess how old I was?
12?
No chance. I was 18.
Wow, you were 18 the first time you tasted an apple.
Yes.
But you had learnt about it in books and...
Yes, I knew about it. I knew about an apple. But an apple was a luxury. It stood at home, right? When people had been walking from Highfield, they were going to protest against the incarceration of ZANU had not been formed at that time. It was an incarceration of the party was called Democratic something, man. Democratic ZANU had not been formed at that time because ZAPU had been banned. So Mugabe then is asked to get onto the podium. He had just come from Ghana, and he was asked to say something, and he was speaking in English. And there was a white man, Angai Paduze, So he was asked, Mugabe, to repeat. Because he had said something. Avans, repeat what you've just said. And then Mugabe said, I don't repeat. Right? I remember that very well. So I asked my dad, could you call, what does the word repeat mean? Okay, good. So, what does it mean? So my dad then, our fathers at that time, So he says, no, okay, I wanted to learn English. Then he went and bought me Great Expectations. Yes, my first novel ever was Great Expectations. So you would ask me to read Great Expectations page by page, even though I didn't understand. No, I was just reading, and then I kept it, and then I eventually, it became a set book for us. I think I was doing O level. Then I had my own copy, and I would tell people that I bought this when I was very young, a long time ago. Yeah, that's how I got to read the Great Expectations.
So what was it like?
Oh, my goodness. Ndaraitaura chirungu iyeyo. No. Ngabe, you can even tell. Imimi intonation yake, it sounds funny. But for us, at that time, it was Ndochain's chirungu speaker. Even no, I gotta give it to him. No, he was a good speaker. I gotta give it to him. He was an eloquent speaker. It was, my goodness,
It's interesting to hear when you were in Harare and
Mm-hmm.
just the diasporic connections that were happening. So the people who had gone overseas,
Mm-hmm.
how they were coming back, and how that
Mm-hmm.
influenced your wanting to leave Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was lucky, right? Ndara Jimmy had been into the United States. And Ndara Jimmy had a circle of friends. So you can imagine, as you're growing up, it was so impressive. He was the oldest boy. Ndara Jimmy was the oldest boy. And Ndara Jimmy had friends, right, who would come and visit him. Vanguard was United States. Ndara Jimmy is now back, and everybody who was in the States or who is in the States, when they come home, they come and visit him, right? In India, I remember very well. I could drive, right? So your dad had already told Mdara Jimmy would know he can drive. So Mdara Jimmy would give me his car. The car was called Simca, I think so. And then we would do things. So that impressed me as I was growing up, because I began to meet a lot of people. Now imagine, I think he must have come back till Form 3 thereabouts. Okay, so that pushes you, man. And the Goromons, where I'm seeing people living after Form 6, that also makes an impact, an impression. No, no, no. You got to go to the university. We just admired Tirikure, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because when Wakuru, we just admired Tirikure.
So was there an exodus of people leaving Zimbabwe for the UK and the US?
The American Methodist Church. Yeah. Because at that time, it was in, I think, Mrewa, Chipinge, Mount Selinda, and places like that. I think so. On the eastern side of Zim, that's where the American Methodist, United American Methodist Church was, and a lot of people from that side went to the US. Bagawanda, So by brushing shoulders, Nabo, it also meant me to want to advance. And I remember one day, I don't know whether he's still alive, but his brother he was once a minister, and Chris Kruneri, right? By Garakuma Cottage on the street, Yana Mdarajim. And his brother came from, and he was already working for the United Nations. Can you imagine? His 60s. Working for the United Nations, that was impressive. So, in the 60s now, that was the time of Vietnam War.
Yes.
Okay? The Americans are in the Vietnam War. And at the same time, in the US, there are protests against the Vietnam War, near the flower power, right? The flower power are also into drugs, LSD and stuff. Waona. And it's also Tirimu UDI. So the kind of music that they are playing in the United States is now also being played in Zimbabwe. And we link that with protests, okay? And everything that was going on in the United States. And if you've got time, check 1969, the Woodstock. Up to today, I mean, those guys who play there, I've got their records. Tell them my records are all the time because it takes me back. And there are guys like Jimi Hendrix and all that stuff. So, but at the same time, and it's also Chukukuraga, and there are bands that are being started, in Harare, with young guys, right? Young ones, my 18-year-olds, now coping the Jackson 5s. Michael Jackson now. So, Trukukura, and then, it's also as a group, we've got these brothers who are coming from the United States and Tine ambition to go to school. They are now our age group, but who are now into music. Okay? They are now into music. And no. we are told, my parents good, my guitar is nazo. We left China to England. I think if we hadn't, we would not be talking about Zoom like this. I think some of us would not have made it at all. Growing up in Bari, no chance. Not in Harare.
Why? What would have happened?
You know, one, the liberation war began to heat up. That's number one. A lot of guys, vazhinji vacho vanga vakuenda kuinela. This is going to work in the mines in South Africa, right? And they would come back. My goodness, those guys used to dress, man. They would come dressed, you know, with the kind of stuff that they would buy in South Africa, okay? And because of the lifestyle of South Africa, these guys, when they come home, those who had not managed to go to South Africa will emulate what these guys who are coming from South Africa do. And then there was a lot of now pickpockets. Yeah, okay. Not a lot of pickpockets. You know, murderers, kind of Tsotsi type. Okay. Now and then the war was heating up, right? Well, you know, this was in 1970. What is 1972? When I was doing Form 5, I got a place to go to Liverpool. So my mind was already, you know, stuck. You know, stuck on going to Liverpool, going to England. And our headmaster at that time, he was a white guy. He's the one who encouraged us to apply for admission into English universities. So I went to University of Rhodesia, but knowing eventually I'm going to go to England. But also at that time, I had gotten in a scholarship to go to Nigeria. This scholarship was from Budiriro Trust. I think it's still there, actually. You know, they sent me some stuff. Budiriro Trust, which is run from the University of Oxford. So that was it. I did not want to be at the University of Rhodesia, and because it was also very racist at that time. You know, I remember telling class, Tikita chemistry. This chemistry lecturer said, "This class is too big. I'm gonna cut it by 10." And there were 10 of us, 10 blacks. You know, so you can imagine. And we knew that no, this place is not for us. You know, I had gotten a place to go to the University of Liverpool, and quite a number of us. You know, we had applied to England, and we had temporary, you know, provisional acceptance. We had provisional acceptance letters, and we were just waiting to my scholarship, which we eventually got. As soon as we got by Heathrow, you would get a scholarship.
Yeah.
So I get onto the plane at Salisbury Airport, and it was coming from it was South African Airways. It was coming from Joburg. So I get onto the plane, and I'm sitting in the middle seat. You know, I think Gangani 2 rows, right? 3. I'm sitting in the middle seat, and so as it took off while on the flight. And then I think dinner was served. And on my left hand side, on the window seat, was this white boy, almost in my age group, I could say honestly. He was offered, and he said no, he didn't want anything to eat. And then the hostess came to me. Then I said, I know I'm okay, you know, because I said to myself, well, maybe it's expensive. Okay, and then she went, slept, and then we flew to Luanda at that time. We flew to Luanda, yes, stopped there, picked up a few passengers, took off, and obviously there was some food again. The young man was, you know, dozing off. Avaramba chikafu. And I turned it down as well. Okay. Then I slept. Then when we were landing in London, where when we were about an hour away from London, from Heathrow, then breakfast was served. And this young man, Anga Mukamanj, okay, he was offered again food. And he refused. And in the food. Could no, you know, I didn't have any money. To tell you that I didn't have any penny on me. And get get out of the plane. It landed, get out of the plane. That's when I went to this young man. He looked younger than everybody else, the immigration official who was reading a newspaper. I remember that very well. And I went to him with my Rhodesian passport. And I said, and I showed him my acceptance letter. You can have Liverpool. In fact, I'd been advised by the National Student Union, NUS, at that time. Would advise me. So they told me that just get onto the plane. When you get there, show them this letter, which came from the National Union of Students. I got there, showed this guy my letter, and he took my passport, put me in a room which was full of Indians who had been kicked out of Uganda at that time. You know, Amandans one in Chandomanji, Babundans one in Zahara Manji. I was so hungry. Anyway, that's how I go to England. Everything else is history.
So how did you get from the airport? So you're saying you had no money?
Okay. I didn't realize. Oh, right. So I wait. I'm feeling cold. I wait in this room with Indians for about an hour. This guy then comes with my passport. He calls my name and he says to me, "Follow me." Imagine, you can imagine that, you know, what exactly is going to go or what's going on. So he tells me, "No, you go out and get a taxi and go to London." So I get out and I see this black taxi. To me, they look like a funeral cortege, a kumba. And somebody said, "I know you can get into that taxi." I said, no, I'm not getting into that taxi. But where is down? Thought I would walk from Heathrow Airport into London. But anyway, no, he says, no. Okay, either you can get a bus. So I get onto a bus, takes me to Victoria Station. So I get to Victoria Station, and the first thing I did, Mapurisa, the British Bobby, had been to Zimbabwe, you know, before, a long time ago, during the Federation. So you could recognize Kutuyo Mpurisa. So I walked up to this guy. I asked him where the British Council was. And apparently these people at the British Council offices had been phoned from Heathrow Airport that I was coming. So they'd already been waiting for me. So he then showed me where the British Council offices were, got there, and the first thing that they did with me was to give me some money to go and buy warm clothes. And little did I know, Kuti, you know, I'm in Oxford, you know, I'm in West End, the West End of London. And I'm in the expensive area. And I went and bought myself a jacket. You won't believe it, in Carnaby Street. I mean, you wouldn't know. Carnaby Street was a street where fashion, people would be, you know, during summer, people would be walking up and down and be taking photographs of and be putting newspapers and stuff. That's where I bought. I went and bought. I didn't know. But I went and bought, you know, it's only later. So even when I told you, your father, I said, he says to me later on, London when we met. And I said he said, no, this is a very nice jacket. What thing of Carnaby Street? They all looked at me with, oh, you know. So I bought, they gave me some money, bought me some warm clothes, gave me some money to buy some food. The next thing is, they said to me, yeah, change up a train, Euston Station. Got on to the train. I zonked off immediately. Kurara Chaku, you know. The train got to Liverpool, Lime Street, and it was about to return to London. and it was being cleaned. The coach was being cleaned. So these ladies saw me sleeping. This train has been here for the last 2 hours. You know, you are in Liverpool. Where exactly? Because no, then I knew, because at that time, people were so organized, my students actually. I had gotten a place and I had gotten a accommodation. Everything was sorted out. So I knew exactly where I wanted to go. Because no, I went to Rathbone House. Yeah, Rathbone House. And I knew my room number. Rathbone, having been to University of Rhodesia, now I had an idea to the University of So, but apparently there had been some people waiting for me. You know, Vangawa organized one student union, but because they didn't see me, they had left. So I get out of the train, walked up to a policeman, and said to him, "Listen, I want, this is where I want to go." Now the family and name a taxi, you know. All over in England, those black taxis. But no, you get that taxi. I got that taxi. That's when I went to my accommodation. The rest is history.
What was it like for you in the classes with the other students? What was your relationship like with them?
Yeah, okay. Because I was the only black, and no one wanted to work with me. Okay, I didn't have any friends, right? I didn't have any friends at all, and it made me work harder, right? It made me work harder because I didn't have anybody wanted to share my information. And then luckily, and I was also doing maths. But in the high school, I didn't do maths. But Shona University, in detail maths. Yeah, it was a little bit tough. But then luckily, I bumped into some guy who knew a Zimbabwean who was doing physics. And he was staying somewhere. And then I looked for this guy. And then I got to know him. And then he is your mama Zimbabweans, and got him Liverpool. Then I got to know them. But going back to my class, to get a maths, he would assist me in mathematics. But mama subjects, I just said to study on my own, right? Which made me, surprisingly, get good marks because I was concentrating, right? And I never wrote a supplementary. Can you imagine? Never. I never wrote a supplementary. But when I went to London now, I had to be wise not to stay with Andina, because everybody in London, to tell you the truth, anyone who was in London, we used to laugh. We used to laugh at them. London, it was party after party. So they never used to concentrate, and it was normal for some of them to write a supplementary. So with your dad, we never wrote any supplementary. So when we eventually went, we would give we just talk about something else, not and a lot of guys, you won't believe it, a lot of guys thought to read nursing. Because how come these guys don't talk about supplementaries? A lot of guys thought we were doing this because we were afraid to talk about not writing supplementary, But anyway, then eventually got settled. Because I was working on my own, and I know I got used to it, to being alone. Like I was saying, I was getting good marks, but I didn't know. I didn't know if I get an A plus or a B plus, okay, or an A, right? I didn't have anyone else to share with so that I get an idea of how everybody else was performing. But somehow these white girls and boys got to know my marks, somehow, I don't know. So Fanga Malebs. So I remember one day they were now beginning to fight over who is going to work with me. In the sense that I would do the work. most of the time, and this person would be with me. So one day, I think it was zoology. It was zoology or some biology course or something. I can't remember what it was exactly, but I can see it. So I'm watching everything, Dapeta, set up everything, and I've written and taken the results and so forth. And I'm washing my hands with my desk behind me by my station. So the demonstrator comes along and it looks at what I've done. To me, it sounded like a reprimand, because the way he said it, I got disturbed. He said, "Who's done this? Right? Who's done this?" So as I turn around, this white boy who was next, who joined me and did nothing, was pointing at me, in her face. I started sweating. Everybody, so he's saying, "Everybody get around here." So everybody is coming to the station. And then I didn't take my bag, put my everything back, and I started walking out. And I'm by the door, and I hear him say, "Kuti, this is what I want you to do." But it was too late. It was too late. I was in shock. I was in shock. Come on. I did everything, and then this white boy had pointed at me, I in a face at him, So I mean, so you can imagine. From that time onwards, they would want to work with me, and I ended up with a couple of friends.
That's a very interesting story. I mean, all your stories are really interesting. It's really, it's really interesting to hear this because, from our perspective, we're learning so much.
Oh, did I tell you this one? I'm in a tutorial. I'm sitting in between. I'm sitting in between two guys, because we would go there in small groups. I'm sitting in between two guys, right? Taitwa grouped into groups, right? Into groups. So I'm sitting in between, right? So the tutor would ask a question. In Indica Pindura, you would say nothing. And you would, if it is correct, you would look at my right and left to explain what I had said without looking at me. And then if you ask another question, the guy on the right answers, you would get all the accolades. That's very good. And you would start explaining, you would look to the left as if I was not there. Can you imagine? And then you end up at the end, Usunga Pindure. And then I remember one day I answered the question these other two guys couldn't answer. And I remember this guy says to me, "Yeah, you're doing proud to your nest, to your race." Yes, I remember that very well. Can you imagine? Yeah. Anyway, that's it's it.
So what's happening with the liberation struggle while you're in England?
There was some conference in Geneva, right? And these guys now, Zapu Nezanu, were told the frontline states, no. You gotta come here and speak with one voice. That's when the Patriotic Front was formed. So everybody in England became member of the Patriotic Front, whether you were Zapu or Zanu. But there were certain people still harbored. Is and so forth.
So what was the final drive that led up to independence?
There were three talks. Fearless and Tiger. There was Fearless that took place on the Mediterranean in a British frigate. It's a navy, whatever. And then eventually the 76, right? Now these people had now formed a patriotic front, okay? Because they were told, Sabatana, we're not going to allow our countries to be bases, to be your bases. Komo was told Nakaunda, because otherwise I will not allow you to continue fighting Marungu. Gabe, Zanu, Bakanzi, na Samora Michel, Batanai. Right. Otherwise, we're not going to allow you Mozambique, because now Mozambique had become independent in 1975.
Yes.
Okay. Now, so they go to Geneva conference and they speak with one voice. Okay, they speak with one voice. Some people, the UNC also went there, and some people crossed the floor, like joined the Patriotic Front. Quite a number of people. And Mdara Mzorewa Agasiwa Ari Edgar, right? And then eventually, as the talks progressed, and then there was this agreement now, which eventually we will have a Lancaster constitutional meeting where we can then agree. Because in between 76 and 79, the war continued, but there were also issues in the background that they were being, my Americans were beginning to push also. No, this has to stop. Nema British. So that continued. Eventually, then that culminated in the Lancaster Agreement, which then ushered the independence of Zimbabwe.
Where were you when the Lancaster Agreement, when the talks were happening?
We were in England. Yes, we would meet with some of them. If we were not there, because remember, it was happening at the time when we were writing exams. But Anam Daramax would be going and drinking beer with them after my talks. It's just we were far away, but we would also come in to just come and pick up the stories could Zafamba say. But I mean, I was in Liverpool, which was very far away. But those who were in London, yeah, I would meet with these guys.
What was the mood like? What did you feel like as
excitement? Excitement. I even actually came out in the newspaper, Liverpool Echo. I was interviewed. Somebody was telling me, do you remember this? I can do a picture. There I don't remember. No. That's you in that newspaper in Liverpool when somebody asked you about because at that time I was now the chairman of the Patriotic Front Student Association in Liverpool, and that's where I met Mr. Masiwa. He was part of that group, and that's how far back we go. And he was just doing his A levels. So yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting. We were very excited to the extent that we knew the country, we were going to be independent because we knew what it meant to be independent. The mood was vibrant.
Did a lot of people go?
Oh yes, a lot of people went home. Huh? Remember, I told you, Kuti, in London, some people, Vanyura Masap, and some people never actually finished some of their courses, right? But during the Lancaster meeting, they'd been entertaining these party functionaries and all that and everything. So, in independence, there's a lot of these people, some of them came back home. Okay? A lot of them, because it was meaningless. You have no qualifications, you have nothing. So a lot of them came to Zimbabwe, came back home, right? Those who have survived up to now, my age group, are people with the qualifications, right? These are the ones that have caused the problem. My age group, that were qualified, who went back home, joined the government, becomes professional civil servants. These are the ones that have gotten us to be where we are, because they're so set in their ways, and Havana pension, they've never done anything else. So a lot of them, right, came. And then there are those who didn't have qualifications. I feel sorry for them. It's sad, Ufungi. It's sad. life is tough. Came back, they got placed because of political connections, right? And then at that time, it's independence. You guys are coming up with your own degrees. You look for the job and you find this person has got the qualification. What do? You retract. So knock up my doors, my politicians don't want to know you anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one to know you anymore. To the extent the good some went back to England.
So in this episode, you have heard a song performed by Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. And what's so crazy about this is that in my wildest imagination, I never thought that a Zimbabwean adolescent youth, young man, was listening and thinking about Woodstock. And so that's why we've included it in there. And I think that is just in terms of just those cross-cultural moments that all the way in the United States, a young man in Zimbabwe, Mbare Harare, was listening to Woodstock and rocking and feeling like it was a music that was also part of the movement. I think that's really interesting.
So Rungan, let's talk about the music from the beginning of the episode.
What I love about the music in the beginning of the episode is any Zimbabwean, when they hear that, I mean, it really brings memories to the news.
I mean, I feel like anyone who even just went to Zimbabwe, even for a short visit, anytime in the 80s, 90s, you would be familiar with that drum sound.
Yeah, and to all those music producers out there, let's get a beat on that because I can see some choreography coming with that.